Welcome to week 4 and halfway week. Now, when I was serving aboard submarines, we would have a halfway night. And so that kind of helped break up the deployment a little bit. We'd have a little celebration, maybe a pizza night. And then, of course, our deployment would get extended. And so we'd have to make up another halfway night. But it was all good. It kind of helps, I think, to break up sometimes these longer deployments, which can stretch into months or longer. And so I encourage you to do the same thing here. Maybe take a little break, do something a little different this week. But most importantly, make sure that you stay on track, stay ahead. I want to give you some questions to consider as we approach the halfway mark for your own research. And these are kind of questions that I ask myself when I do research, and you might find them helpful as well. I go back to the beginning. I ask myself, what is the purpose of the study? What is the problem we are addressing? What kind of information do I need? And most importantly, what type of information are most important? Okay? And then you might also want to consider, and as you look forward, you say, okay, well, how will I use this information? And when I get to that point, when I get to that question, it helps kind of focus the rest of the research. So hopefully that'll help you. You may find other questions that'll be more meaningful to your research. Those are ones that I tend to ask myself throughout research. Back to our primary text, Tracy, chapter 9. Here the author reviews the nuts and bolts of the frenetic, or think about relevant, qualitative data analysis. Now, scholars across all disciplines, they kind of drifted away from a strictly purist interpretation of grounded theory, and they've gone more towards an iterative approach. What fits well? Don't get yourself stuck in just one mode, using one model. You might learn something that'll actually veer you off a little bit, and that's okay, as long as you don't veer too far off course. And just as a reminder, iteration it's a reflexive process, right? You revisit the data. You're trying to connect these empirical materials to maybe some emerging insights you found. And you progressively refine her or his focus, the understanding that you may have. Now, this author quotes from Srivastava and Hopwood. They ask a different set of questions. I'm going to read these to you as well for your edification. They ask the questions like this. What are the data telling me? Can you explicitly engage with theoretical, subjective, ontological, epistemological, field understandings, all those kind of theory-based ideas? What is it I want to know? And this is based upon your own research objectives, the questions that you posed, theoretical points of interest. And then thirdly, what is the dialectical relationship between what the data are telling me and what I want to know? Fancy way of saying, how do I refine my focus? Remembering that you have to link back to those research questions, right? Don't ever forget those. Okay, you might look at the motivation or motivating questions and coding domains that the author offers in chapter 9 and 10. Also, questions to inspire narrative analysis. There's some tips and tools that are helpful in that chapter. All right, moving on to one of our supplemental papers. This is from Azunga, and the purpose of the paper is to explain the rationale for choosing the qualitative approach. And you'll often get this question. I get it quite often as a qualitative researcher, because many people in the field, they're comfortable with quantitative data, right? Ask a question, measure the results, spit out an answer. That's quantitative. Talked to you last week about being an engineer. It's very precise. It's in a way very simple once you learn the formulas and all that. Qualitative is much different. It's one of the reasons I love qualitative, because there is no right or wrong answer. And because there's no right or wrong answer, you often have to justify. Why did you choose the qualitative approach? What practices did you use? How did you recruit and select the potential candidates? What training and development's required for your researchers? What kind of training and development do you have? What are your bona fides? And then, of course, the rewards that you're going to get or the findings that you're going to provide. Why should people care? For our purposes, it's about employee communication, participation, maybe diversity management, work-life balance, All those different approaches that you'll use to analyze your data and apply that data in a way that's meaningful to an organization. The authors also quote Bryman and Bale, who talked about the qualitative approach that highlights contextual understanding, right? So you can understand something, but how do you add context to it? You add emphasis that researchers, we usually seek to understand the behavior, values, beliefs, all these different things, but we seek to understand it within context. Very important. And then finally, the second supplemental reading we have this week is from Plowman. This study examines the extent to which public relations, strategic communications, and other processes, how they are used to develop an organization's social media communication efforts. I included this because more and more we are being asked to include social media as part of a strategic communication plan. I think that's a good thing. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I have my own thoughts that maybe diverge a little from what our authors explore. For example, some say that the strategic approach used for social media is different than one that we typically use in a public relations setting. For those of you who are public relations practitioners, maybe you're a member of the Public Relations Society of America, or you have an undergraduate degree or taken other public relations classes, you're very well aware of research, action, planning, communication, and evaluation, right? Sometimes known as RPI, or research, planning, implementation, evaluation. These authors, citing Breckenridge 2010 and 2013, argue that maybe the social media requires a different approach. I'm not sure that's true, but they certainly offer some evidence to support their findings. I base mine not so much on research. I haven't done a whole lot of academic research in social media, but I have a lot of practice in social media, and I find that the RPI approach, or whatever approach that you are normally using for strategic communication, it works quite well with social media as well. Okay, that's it for week 4, but as always, stay ahead with your assignments, stay engaged in that discussion board, and enjoy your time of learning.